Samsung has once again updated their smallest flippable smartphone, but the question is the brand new Samsung Galaxy Z Flip worth it, or just a very minor upgrade that you should pass by? Let's find out. For the last 7-ish years, because we're on the Z Flip 7, Samsung has been the leader in flippable smartphones or foldable smartphones. However, recently, competitors have started to produce some really compelling offerings that in some ways are significantly better than any of Samsung's offerings. Over the last few weeks, I've been using and reviewing the Z Flip 7 to find out whether this phone stacks up to the competition or whether it's just a minor upgrade that kind of keeps it in the middle of the pack. Unlike the Samsung Z Fold 7, which I actually just dropped a review video on, if you want to check that out, there will be a link at the top of the screen, this phone hasn't had as many major improvements. Now don't get me wrong, it has had some improvements, but not as big or as noticeable as the Z Fold 7. And honestly, the changes that have been made to the Z Flip 7 are very welcome, and the things that haven't been changed, not as big of a deal. Unlike the Z Fold 7, which this year saw a reasonably large price bump, the Z Flip 7 has stayed at the same base price as last year's Z Flip 6. Now interestingly enough, this is not the only Z Flip 7 that released this year. Samsung seems to be taking more of a Motorola approach to their flippable smartphones, and they've released the Z Flip 7, which is essentially the Z Flip 6 in a slightly newer package with a different name. For a few of the previous iterations of the Motorola Razr, that's something that's happened pretty regularly, but it's not something that we've really seen with the Samsung Z Flip line. Now though, we're getting that with the Z Flip 7 FE, which comes in at a starting price of $899 or basically $900, whereas this is around $1,100. It's $1,099 to start. So now the decision to get a Z Flip 7 over other foldable smartphones has gotten a bit harder because Samsung has released more options. You've got last year's Z Flip 6, you can get that used for a reasonably decent price. You can buy the Z Flip 7 FE, which essentially is the Z Flip 6 for full retail from Samsung, or you can buy the Z Flip 7, which is the full, it's not a flagship, but the full fat version of the Z Flip line. The Z Flip 7 itself comes at two different price points. You've got the 256GB storage option, which comes in at $1,099, or if you want to double the storage size up to 512GB, you can increase the price by $120 to $1,219. I have the 256GB version because I've been buying a lot of smartphones recently and I really don't need the higher storage option when I'm not going to be able to use this phone long enough to fill up the storage, at least not as my daily driver, especially when I'm offloading all of my photos onto my Google Drive or Google Photos or whatever the case may be. So 256, totally fine for me. There are a few different color options. You've got a dark blue, you've got sort of a coral color, a black, and then this sort of teal color, which I don't remember exactly why I bought this color. I think it was exclusive to like pre-orders or the launch version or maybe the website. I don't know what the deal was, but for whatever reason, I decided to buy this one and I kind of wish I had bought the black one. Now, although the price point is the same as last year's Z Flip 6, at least when it first came out, some things have changed relatively largely, and that's specifically the increase in screen size. Last year's cover display was a 3.4-inch 60Hz display that was fine, although not that large. This year, Samsung decided to up the ante and give this phone a full edge-to-edge display, which is now 4.1 inches, and they made it 120 Hz. This change alone is pretty great, and while it maybe doesn't justify buying a whole new phone if you have the Z Flip 6, if you use this cover display a lot, it might be worth looking into. Now, protecting this outer display, you've got Corning Gorilla Glass Victus 2, which is very strong and scratch resistant and all that sort of good stuff, which is a big plus, especially because this screen is going to be rubbing against the inside of your pocket a lot. And even though it seems like the brightness of the outer display is the same as last year's Z Flip 6 at 1600 nits, it's bright enough that even in direct sunlight, I had no issue seeing it. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but it was solid. Now, one thing that's really interesting about these like small flippable smartphones like the Motorola Razr or the Samsung Z Flip is how useful this tiny outer display has become. Not only have they made it very useful in the features and the apps that you can use on it, you can't use every app and you can't do everything on the outer display, although you can if you download some other apps and do a workaround. It's a whole big thing. But out of the box, even still, you can do a lot of things like check notifications, answer texts, use it as a selfie camera viewfinder. There's a lot of really cool things that you can do on this outer display, and having that little bit more of screen real estate not only looks better in my opinion, but also makes it a bit more useful. And unlike the Z Fold 7, where it feels like you've almost got two phones or a phone and a tablet, this doesn't feel like that. This just feels like it's an accessory attached to your phone, which I actually kind of think I prefer, because with the Z Fold 7, you're spending around $2,000 to get a phone that you open sometimes. With this phone, while yes, you do open it sometimes, if you actually want to do any serious scrolling, news reading, content creation, things like that, you really have to open it. With that phone, you can use the outer display for pretty much everything, and it just feels like a regular candy bar phone. So it makes it more difficult to choose to open the inner display because honestly, there's not as many reasons to. With this phone, because the screen is so small, kind of forces you to do it, which kind of sounds counterintuitive. It sounds like I'm happy that they're taking away features from the outer display, and in a lot of ways, I kind of am. This is is really only a notification display or a viewfinder, and that's really all I use it for. And there are some games you can play on it, which is cool. And I feel like they gave you just enough so you can complete the tasks that you want to complete, but if you really want to do some work on this phone or do anything else that's more intensive, you got to use the inner display. And I said this in the Z Fold review, that phone feels redundant in a lot of ways because that outer display is so big. But now let's talk about that inner display. And not only did the outer display get larger, but so did the inner display. Instead of a 6.7-inch screen, you've now got a 6.9-inch screen. And realistically, it doesn't feel that much bigger. I mean, it's 0.2 inches larger in the diagonal direction, so it really isn't that much bigger, but it is nice. I like that they're getting slightly bigger, and when you compare it to like my iPhone, screen size-wise, it's pretty similar. Height-wise, and even width-wise, actually. It's not the same yet, but it's getting close. Now, this inner display is a foldable dynamic AMOLED 2X display, and like last year's display, it's also 120 Hz capable. The only screen that kind of got that little bump was this outer display. Now, unlike the outer display, which like last year's phone can only get up to 1600 nits of peak brightness, the inner display, unlike last year's phone, can now get up to 2600 nits of peak brightness. So it's 1000 nits brighter when it comes to outdoor usage, and you do notice that. It's a very bright display. It's the same brightness as the displays on the Z Fold 7, which is a huge plus. I really love how bright those screens are, and it makes it very usable outside, especially when you're using this larger display, which again, this is the one you're probably going to use the most. Now, of course, the age-old question when it comes to folding smartphones is how bad is the crease on this phone? And yeah, it's not gone yet. They haven't found a way to make the crease invisible, but it is a little bit better than last year. Not a huge amount, still very noticeable, but it's a little bit better. You do get used to it. You don't feel it as much, and honestly, it gets worse the more that you use it. Like, when you first pull this phone out of the box, you barely notice it at all, even with the black screen in light, but the first time you fold it, the crease becomes visible, then the more that you fold it, the more visible it gets. I'd say after like 2 weeks, it stops kind of getting worse and worse and worse, but for that first day of like folding and unfolding, you start to notice it more and more and more. Now, of course, you still feel it. There's still a divot there, but you get used to it. When you're scrolling up and down, you sometimes don't even notice it. Or when you're watching videos or playing games like this, you don't even touch it, so it's not even a big deal. Now, what I will say, which is kind of a gripe with all foldable smartphones at the moment, is that this screen is still very easily damaged. There's a screen protector on there, which if you pull off, it destroys the screen. There are problems that you have with foldable screen smartphones that you just don't have with regular candy bar phones. And actually, really quickly speaking about that screen protector, what really frustrates me is that it's ever so slightly smaller than the actual screen itself. So you get this like thin line around the entire like edge of the screen, which you can sometimes notice. Like I was filming a video, which we'll talk about later about the camera quality and things like that. I was filming a video and I noticed this like orange line along the edge of the screen, and I thought maybe I'd broken the screen already, but it turns out the way that the studio lights in the studio were reflecting on the phone, it was just reflecting off of the edge of the screen protector just right and creating this like orange line, which is really frustrating. Now the Fold 7 also has a screen protector, but for whatever reason, it's closer to the edge of the phone. Maybe my phone is just not, maybe it's just got a slightly smaller screen protector than all the other phones, I don't know, but it's something that kind of annoyed me a little bit. Not super noticeable, but in certain situations when the light hits it just right, it feels like there's a line kind of going through the edge of your screen. Like it's not, you can't really see it. I'll try and get some B-roll footage of it so that you can see where it's at. There's like a, I don't know, like a 1/4 of a millimeter of screen around the entire screen protector. And that line kind of bugs me, especially when you notice it, you can't like unnotice it. And again, you can't pull off the screen protector because it will destroy the screen. Now, when speaking about durability, when it comes to the Z Flip 7, it is slightly upgraded over the Z Flip 6. It's now IP48 water and dust resistant, which means that you can throw it into a pool of 5-foot depth, like 1.5 meters, for about 30 minutes, and you should be good. Now, that's just the water resistance. When it comes to dust resistance, it's still not great. It still has trouble with sand and larger specks of dust, and things can get in between the screen and the phone itself, so there's that. They do a pretty decent job of kind of like covering up where the dust could get in when you've creased the phone, but there still are areas where dust can get in, and because of that, it can't get like a full super dust resistant rating because it's just not. It's not super dust resistant. And that's another sort of downside of foldable phones. All of them have this problem. None of them are great to take to the beach. None of them are that durable overall, so it's something to keep in mind. Now, Samsung did upgrade the frame of this phone. It's now an Armor aluminum frame, or I think that's what it's called, which makes it a little bit thinner, a little bit lighter, and apparently a bit more durable. I don't know, I've dropped it a couple times, but it doesn't seem like it's, any more or less durable than last year's phone. Then again, I'm not throwing it against the ground. I literally almost threw it against the wall just there by accident, almost slipped out of my hands. That would have been a real test of its strength right there. But I mean, so far so good. No scuffs, no scratches. The glass on the back of the phone seems pretty durable, and I like how minimal it is. There's no branding on the back. In fact, the only branding on the phone is on the hinge right there, which is nice. I like how simple that is. Speaking of the overall design, it does look very, very similar to last year's Z Flip 6 in terms of the overall industrial design. You've got the same form factor, the same general design language, feels the same. It's still not the easiest phone to open. In fact, I'll throw a clip up of me trying to open this phone one-handed with my non-dominant hand, my left hand, and that was a chore. In fact, I'm having trouble now doing it with my dominant hand. I don't want to damage the screen by getting my fingernail on there, but it's really hard to open with one hand. I'll say that. And there's no really easy way of opening it. You can't really flip it open. You kind of have to do this. I will say the Motorola Razr with its rounded edges, although I think they're not as clean or as minimal as the Samsung flat edges, they are easier to open. That is a plus of all of the Motorola Razr phones. They're easier phones to open or flip open. Now I will say compared to the Z Fold 7 with these tiny thin flat edges, this phone is easier to open than that phone, but neither one is super easy to open. But with that being said, let's continue on with some of the differences. There is a new processor inside this phone. This phone comes with a Samsung Exynos 2500 with AI improvements or AI enhancements, which means that it's supposed to be more efficient because of AI. When comparing it side by side to other flagship style phones, it is slower. It's not a flagship phone realistically. It's basically a Samsung S25 that can flip. It's a good everyday phone for a lot of different people, and it can handle pretty much every app and game and thing that you throw at it as long as it's not super intense. Along with the new chip, which unfortunately doesn't stack up that well against the Snapdragon 8 Elite, which you find in the Fold 7. Again, that phone is around $1,000 more expensive, so it's not super surprising. Well, actually, for around the same price as this phone, depending on which storage size you're getting, you can get the S25 Ultra, which has the Snapdragon 8 Elite. So there's that, but that phone doesn't flip, so you're paying for the flip here. Now, with all that being said, this phone does come with 12 gigabytes of RAM. That's the same for both the 256 and 512 gigabyte version. In terms of battery life, they have upgraded the battery size from 4,000 milliamp hours to 4,300 milliamp hours, which does make a reasonably sizable difference. The general consensus that I've seen online is between like 17 to 18 hours of video playback battery life on the Z Flip 7, which is nice. It's an improvement over the last year's version. And I found from just daily overall use for me, it lasts generally all day unless I'm really trying to film a lot of footage or do something like game for a long time. And it actually gets hot when you game for a long time, so keep that in mind. As you might have expected, this phone is capable of 25 watt wired charging and 10 watt wireless charging. You can also reverse charge up to 4.5 watts. And while those specs aren't incredible or groundbreaking, I will say I'm genuinely always surprised how much they can pack into foldable phones, especially something like the Fold 7, which is like such a thin body. This one is still pretty thin, and there's still a lot going on in here. And you kind of lose the whole middle of the phone because you've got that hinge in there, which kind of takes away all of the real estate. So it's impressive what they can fit in this small phone. But now let's talk about cameras, which are my favorite parts of any smartphone because I do a lot of vlogging on my cameras. I'm a full-time YouTuber, so vlogging is a big part of my life, especially on my main channel, my sneaker channel, which by the way, if you haven't checked it out, it's Seth Fowler. Just type in Seth Fowler on YouTube, learn about some sneakers. I really enjoy it over there. Honestly, this tech channel is more of a passion project for me, so I'm just really excited to be able to talk about phones with you guys and basically be able to buy these phones with money I make off the channel, which is cool. That being said, because this is not a flagship smartphone, unfortunately, you do not get flagship cameras. In fact, they're basically the same cameras that you get on last year's phone. The front-facing selfie camera is a 10 megapixel camera. It's fine, works for face unlock, nothing crazy there, it looks okay. The two cameras that you find, I guess, on the front screen are of course a 12 megapixel ultra-wide camera, which again is fine, and a 50 megapixel main camera, which is fine. They're all fine. Here's some images up against my favorite camera phone, the iPhone 16 Pro Max, to show you the difference between these two phones. All right, so this is how I look and sound with the iPhone 16 Pro Max. How does it compare to the other camera? Let me know. All right, so here's a vlogging test on the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 7. We've got a dehumidifier going on in the background, test out noise canceling. Let me know how it looks and sounds versus the Z Fold 7 and the iPhone 16 Pro Max. You like the way it looks? You like the way it sounds? Is it better? Is it worse? Let me know in the comments. The video quality, the photo quality, let me know in the comment section down below which one you like better. It's possible that you do like this phone better because maybe you like Samsung's color science better than Apple's, but realistically I think that the iPhone 16 Pro Max has a significantly better camera. Now generally, because I like to vlog myself on a phone, I like ultra wide lenses over telephoto lenses because usually when you're holding a phone, you kind of have to frame yourself without seeing the screen. Now when it comes to flippable phones, what I like about these is that you can actually set up the camera on the outer screen or the viewfinder on the outer screen. The fact that you have the main cameras on the same side of the phone as the viewfinder makes it really great because you have not only a viewfinder for your selfie camera with the best cameras on the phone, but also when you're vlogging, it's really easy to set up the shot because you can see yourself and the camera's right there. It's like a flip out screen on a Sony camera, like the one I'm using right now. It's great, it's super useful, and I like it a lot, and I wish iPhone had a way to do that. I guess there are back screens now that you can like MagSafe to the back of your phone and use, which I might actually do a full video on. I might buy a bunch of them and test them out and compare them. But either way, that's something that I really love about the external screen on folding phones is that you get that viewfinder on the same side as the high-end cameras. Now, as you can see, video quality is fine. It's more than adequate for video calls, especially if you're using these outer cameras. Low light photos, they're all right. I would say that if you're creating any kind of content for TikTok, Instagram, even YouTube, you should be totally fine with this. If you're looking for the highest end camera phone though, this is not the way to go. But honestly, for content creation, it almost doesn't even matter anymore. Most phones have good enough cameras. I mean, look at some of the most successful YouTubers out there, like Ryan Trahan. He films a lot of his content on his iPhone. So overall, I'd give these cameras like a 6 in my arbitrary rating scale. I guess the top of the line would be like I wouldn't say it's an iPhone, I'd say like a portable DSLR. The bottom one is like the Motorola Razr V3 from 2003, and then this is somewhere in the middle. It's good. Maybe it's closer to a 7. I don't know. If we're comparing it that way. Maybe it's closer to a 7. Of course, like every modern smartphone now, you've got a lot of AI features, which is no surprise at all. This phone has all of these standard Samsung and Google AI features that you'd like. It also has Samsung DeX, which allows you to basically cast like a PC-like experience to screens and things like that. So if you're into that, you can do that. Like the Fold 7, this phone comes with the brand new Android 16 and One UI 8. So if you want the latest Android software, grab one of these folding phones. The Ultra doesn't even have that. In fact, the Ultra has, I think, a beta version of Android 16. So if you want the latest version in its standard version, go with the new foldable phones. And of course, if you buy a new phone versus a pre-owned phone, you get 7 years of Android support and Samsung support. So that's a big plus. So if you plan to keep this phone for up to 7 years, you're good to go. Now, most people upgrade their phones every other year. So that honestly isn't a huge consideration for a lot of people. For some people it is. My dad's had the same iPhone SE since the SE first came out. And before that, I'm not kidding, before he got the iPhone SE, he had the Motorola Razr V3, which he got back in 2005. There you go. There are people out there who barely ever upgrade their phone. But for, I'd say, the general population, once every 2 to 3 years. So overall, is the Samsung Z Flip 7 worth it? If you're looking for a very cool folding phone that's fun to use, sounds amazing, listen to that. That sounds great. I love that. That's the best part of the entire phone, I'll be honest with you. And is also reasonably powerful with decent cameras and good looking screens, then yeah, the Z Flip 7 is worth it. If you just want a folding phone, maybe the Z Flip 7 isn't the way to go because you can get cheaper options like the Z Flip 7 FE or even buy an older version of these phones. Again, the only real upgrades here are different processor, larger external screen. The internal screen is similar. It is a little bit different, but it's very, very similar in a lot of ways. And battery life is marginally better. Realistically, it's a small upgrade. The Motorola Razr that came out this year was also relatively small upgrade. So if you want a folding phone and you want like the latest folding phone and you're okay with some of the more mid-tier specs, then get this phone. In that case, I do think it's worth it. It's expensive, but I don't think it's overly expensive. That being said, if you want like a top of the line phone and you still want to spend around the same amount of money, but maybe you don't care as much about the folding aspect of the phone, grab the S25 Ultra. If you have an older Z Flip phone like a Z Flip 6 or maybe even a Z Flip 5, I don't know if it's worth the upgrade. Anything older than that though, and you want to get the latest Z Flip, yeah, probably worth it. But hey, let me know your thoughts on the Z Flip 7 in the comment section down below. Do you own one? Do you have a Z Flip 6? Are you planning to upgrade? Do you not like this phone? Do you like this phone? Love to hear all your thoughts in the comment section. So make sure to comment down below, hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet, and I will see you all in the next one.